On the very first night of marriage, just as the candles flickered and the room filled with the scent of roses, the groom leaned closer and whispered a secret that changed everything. I am a Shamel, but you must keep my secret for the rest of your life. What happened next will touch your heart forever. The room was filled with the soft glow of candles. The scent of roses drifted in the air. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands trembling slightly. The silence between them felt heavy, almost unbreakable. Finally, he took a deep breath. His voice was low but steady. He said, I am a Shamel, but you have to keep my secret for the rest of your life. Her heart skipped a beat. The words echoed in her ears. She looked at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. Her chest tightened, and her breath grew uneven. The world around her seemed to blur. The flickering candlelight cast shadows on his face, showing both fear and hope. He lowered his gaze, unable to meet her eyes. His hands twisted nervously. As if bracing for rejection, she felt her pulse racing, her mind spinning with questions. Yet beneath the storm inside her, she noticed the tremble in his lips. The pain in his silence spoke louder than his words. Her throat went dry, but she forced herself to swallow. Her fingers clenched the fabric of her dress. In that moment, she felt both shock and compassion colliding within her. The secret he shared was not just a truth. It was a plea for acceptance. Her eyes softened. Though her heart still struggled with confusion, she realized how much courage it must have taken. For him to reveal this, the night that was supposed to be filled with joy had turned into a test of love. The air grew heavier, but a strange warmth lingered between them. Her lips parted, but the words refused to form. Instead, she simply looked at him, searching his face, searching for the man she had just married, searching for the truth. Hidden behind his trembling heart, his eyes slowly lifted, uncertain, as if afraid of what he might find in her gaze. For a moment, their silence spoke louder than words. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. Yet she could hear the faint crackle of the candles. The room felt fragile, like glass that could shatter. With one wrong word, she inhaled deeply, her chest rising and falling as if gathering strength. Finally, she whispered, Why did you choose to tell me tonight? His shoulders slumped, as if the weight of years pressed down on him. I could not hide it from you, he said softly. My whole life I have lived with fear of judgment, fear of losing those I care for. Yet tonight, I wanted to begin our life with honesty. Tears welled in her eyes, but not from anger. She could see the vulnerability in him, raw and unguarded. It pierced her heart in a way she had never felt before. Her hand trembled as she reached forward. For a brief second, he flinched, expecting rejection, but her fingers gently rested on his. The warmth of her touch made him freeze. Her voice was quiet, but firm. You trusted me with your truth. That means more than you know. A tear slipped down his cheek, shining in the candlelight. He had been bracing for pain, but instead he felt a kindness he never imagined. The room no longer felt heavy. It felt like a place where two hearts were beginning to understand one another. And in that fragile silence, something tender began to bloom. He looked at her hand resting over his, almost unable to believe it was real. Her eyes no longer carried shock alone, but a quiet strength that held him steady. The candles flickered, casting soft golden light across their faces, as if the room itself was holding its breath. She whispered, I do not know everything about your pain, but I can see it has shaped you. His lips trembled, but he managed a faint smile. You do not hate me? He asked, his voice breaking with fear. She shook her head slowly, her eyes glistening. Hate cannot live where love and kindness begin, she replied gently. His chest rose with a deep, shaky breath, as though years of burden had been lifted. In that single moment, he leaned forward slightly, searching her face for certainty. Her hand tightened around his, reassuring him she was still there. The silence turned softer, filled not with tension, but with unspoken promises. For the first time in years, he felt seen not for what he hid, but for who he was. And she, sitting beside him, realized that love was not only about perfection, but about embracing the truth of another soul. The night that began with fear was quietly transforming into something rare, something tender, something that could grow into trust. The warmth between them deepened. Like a fragile flame slowly gaining strength, she could hear his uneven breaths, each one carrying the weight of secrets buried for too long. Her thumb brushed softly over the back of his hand, steady and reassuring. "I may not understand everything right now," she said quietly, "but I understand you are honest with me. That is enough for tonight." His eyes shimmered with unshed tears, reflecting both relief and disbelief. No one had ever met his truth with such gentleness before. He whispered, "I was so afraid you would turn away, afraid that I would lose you before we even began." She leaned closer, her voice tender yet firm. "If marriage is a journey, then we will walk it step by step. Secrets divide hearts, but honesty can build bridges." His lips curved into the faintest smile. It's fragile but real. The heaviness that once suffocated the room began to lift. The roses in the corner released their sweet fragrance, mingling with the calm that settled between them. For the first time that night, he allowed himself to breathe without fear. And she, though her heart was still full of questions, felt a strange and beautiful certainty that compassion had the power to transform even the most difficult truths into something deeply human. The night was no longer about fear. It was about the beginning of a bond woven with trust, tenderness, and the promise of understanding. He sat in silence, studying her face as if it was the first safe place he had ever known. The trembling in his hands slowly faded, replaced by a fragile calm. She noticed the way his shoulders eased, the tension slipping away little by little. Her heart softened further, realizing how much he had carried alone. "You have lived with this fear for so long," she whispered, her voice like a bomb. He nodded, his throat too tight to speak. A single tear rolled down. But this time it was not from Shamit, was from relief. She gently lifted his chin so his eyes met hers. "There is no need to hide from me anymore," she said with quiet strength. Her words sank into him, wrapping around the emptiness he had felt for years. He closed his eyes for a moment, savoring the warmth of acceptance. The room felt different, now not a place of confession, but of healing. The candlelight flickered against the walls, as if blessing their unspoken promise. She leaned her head slightly on his shoulder, closing the space between them. That simple gesture spoke more than any words could. He inhaled deeply, the scent of roses and her closeness filling him with peace. For the first time in his life, his truth did not feel like a curse. It felt like the beginning of something beautiful, something worth holding on to. The night that had begun with fear was now gently unfolding into trust, compassion, and the quiet seed of love. He placed his hand carefully over hers, as though afraid the moment might vanish if he moved too quickly. Her touch remained steady, firm and warm, grounding him in a way he had never known before. For years he had hidden behind walls of silence, pretending to be someone the world would accept. But now, in this quiet room, he no longer felt the need to pretend. She lifted her gaze, her eyes soft yet full of questions. "I do not need all the answers tonight," she murmured. "I just need to know that your heart is true." His lips curved into a trembling smile. "My heart has never been more true than it is in this moment," he replied, his voice breaking with sincerity. The words settled between them like a gentle vow. The candles burned lower, their light softer, their warmth surrounding them like an embrace. She leaned closer, her cheek brushing against his shoulder. The closeness spoke of trust, of acceptance, of a bond deeper than words. He closed his eyes, listening to the quiet rhythm of her breath, steady and comforting. For the first time, he did not feel like a secret to be hidden. He felt like a soul that was seen, valued, and safe. And she, though still carrying her own uncertainty, realized that love was not about what the world expected. It was about choosing to hold someone's truth as gently as a fragile flower. In that moment, their marriage was no longer just a ritual. It became a promise of kindness, patience, and understanding. The night grew quieter, as if the world outside had hushed to honor their fragile beginning. Her hand remained in his, unmoving like an anchor that kept him from drifting back into fear. He studied her face, the way her eyes carried both strength and softness, and it filled him with a hope he had never dared to imagine. "I never thought I would be accepted for who I am," he whispered, his voice raw. She turned her head slightly, her cheek brushing his shoulder again. "You are more than just what you fear others will see," she replied gently. "You are a person with dreams, with a heart, with kindness. That is what matters to me." His chest tightened, not with anxiety, but with a wave of emotion too deep to contain. He had lived so long believing his truth was a burden, something that would only push love away. Yet here she was, holding that truth as if it was not a weight, but a bond. Her fingers squeezed his hand with quiet reassurance. "You do not have to face the world alone anymore," she said. Her words sank deep, chasing away the shadows that had followed him for years. The roses filled the room with their fragrance, the candles burning softly, as if witnessing a new chapter unfolding. He leaned his forehead gently against hers, closing his eyes to feel the peace of her presence, and she, with her heart steady and kind, realized that this night, though unexpected, was weaving a story far greater than she had ever imagined, a story not built on perfection, but on the courage to be real and the grace to accept. Their foreheads rested together, and in that closeness, the silence became tender rather than heavy. His breath mingled with hers, steadying with every passing second. She could feel the warmth of his skin, the rhythm of his heart, and it told her more than words ever could. For so long he had been afraid of rejection, yet here, in her presence, he felt a rare safety. Her voice came softly, like a lullaby. "Every soul carries its own truth. Yours does not make you less, it makes you real." A tear slipped from his eye, but she brushed it away gently with her thumb. He whispered, "You are kinder than I deserve." She shook her head, her eyes shining with quiet conviction. "Kindness is not about deserving. It is about giving. And tonight we both give each other something precious, honesty and trust." Her words wrapped around him like a gentle embrace, melting the last pieces of fear that clung to him. He exhaled slowly, a long breath that seemed to release years of hidden pain. The room felt different now, filled not with the weight of secrets, but with the soft glow of acceptance. She leaned against him fully, her head resting on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, and he, holding her close, realized that this was the first time he had ever been embraced without condition. The night did not unfold as either of them had expected, yet it became something far more sacred, a beginning built not on perfection, but on truth, compassion, and the courage to stay. The candles had nearly melted down, their soft glow flickering across the quiet room. She remained in his arms, her breathing calm, her presence steady. For the first time, he felt the weight of his secret no longer crushing, but shared. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss upon it. "Thank you," he whispered, "for seeing me when I could not even see myself." Her smile was small, but full of warmth. "From tonight onward," she replied softly, "we are no longer two people with walls between us. We are partners, carrying both joy and truth together." The words settled into his heart like a promise he had longed to hear. Outside, the night stretched endlessly quiet and serene. Inside, two souls had found a beginning, expected fragile, yet full of hope, and as they drifted into the embrace of sleep, the secret that once felt like a shadow became a bridge, tying them closer than ever. Their marriage had not started with perfection, but with honesty and kindness, and that, in its truest sense, was the most beautiful beginning of all.